Would you please help me in welcoming writer-director Annabelle Attanasio and star Camila Morrone. Welcome, ladies. I think I also watched this for the first time about 2 hours ago when I found out I had to moderate this, and I am still reeling in the best of ways. I commend you both on incredible filmmaking and performing, and I believe this premiered at South by Southwest earlier this year, and it's gone on to receive such mass critical acclaim, award ceremonies. It has already caused such a buzz on the festival circuit, and it's only beginning its journey from a film standpoint. So, did you expect this kind of pickup? What has that journey been like for both of you, just in working together and then being able to receive the attention it's gotten from audiences all around the world so far?
I don't think we expected this.
I definitely didn't expect it.
Yeah, I think this story just always meant a lot to me. It's a very personal story in a lot of ways, but it also felt very universal and like something that a lot of young people, and not necessarily just women, but all people could relate to in terms of that codependency and that adult-child syndrome that people get thrust into from an early age sometimes. And so that's kind of what I was focused on, and Cami really understood that. And in terms of shooting and then having a vision for a life for the film, I think it was important for us to share the film with as many people as possible by any means possible. And that's been kind of the amazing gift that we've been given this year to play, I think, over 30 festivals. We've won our 12th award last week or something, and it's just been incredible to have the film received in this way and to have Cami be received by the public in this way, where she's so embraced in her incredible performance.
I know you've been called the new Jennifer Lawrence, which is, that's a big compliment to J-Law. Again, snaps to you. And so I guess, how did you guys find each other? So you wrote this at age 23, 24? Yeah.
I started writing this when I was like 20 or something like that, and I started as an actor, and this story gave me a tremendous sense of identity because as an actor, you're auditioning for like 1920s prostitute in Boardwalk Empire, and it's hard to find purpose in that. And so I just started writing this to give myself an outlet for a story I thought really deserved to be told. And Cami came along, she auditioned, and she gave an amazing tape. I actually revisited your tape like a couple days ago. I've been going down memory lane recently. She gave this killer tape that really, it reminded me of the things that I loved about, yes, it was. It reminded me of what I loved about Katie Jarvis and Fish Tank, and these amazing performances that are these like new and kind of raw actors. And Cami just had you had such vulnerability in your eyes. And then we workshopped some scenes in Montana together in my kitchen, in the place that I was staying. And we kind of tried to like shoot a lot of the movie. And I don't know, it was really easy to work together. Cami's very honest. So she wasn't like, well, I think, she was like, no, it's not working. It's gotta be this. This is the thing. Like, here, this line, da-da-da. Like, she's very blunt. And a lot of actors are very afraid to hurt the director's feelings. And I loved her sense of honesty. It made things go a lot faster. And I think we got to a much deeper point with a lot of the scenes because Cami really was like, I saw how this scene ended the shot that you got, and this scene has to visually start differently, so I'm gonna start sitting. Like, you just brought such a sense of like command to set and such an intelligence as well.
I'm just glad you liked it because I think most other directors would be like, who is this actor?
No.
Who the F does she think she is?
No, not at all.
Do you remember any of those scenes? Or Camila, do you remember, what you wanted to enhance with Mickey's character when you first read the script, and what that meant to you, and what you thought that you could bring to the table in terms of your acting experience in the evolution of working together with Annabelle?
I didn't plan anything that I brought. I met with Annabelle in Anaconda and talked a little bit about. I had like all these notes on the script, and I was like, and I think this should be like this, and this should be like this, and Mickey should wear this. And she was like, okay, I'll take some of those notes. and so yeah, I had an idea of the feeling of Mickey and what she felt like for me, but in terms of, you know, the actual action and what ended up on the screen is just a process of trial and error. Like, we would start scenes one way and be like, it's not working, or I would be like, I don't know, I don't feel it, I can't get there, and then we'd switch it, and it's just about like having a very general idea of what is the feeling and the emotion you're trying to portray that's the most important with this character, and what are you trying to say in the film, and then everything else just kind of shows up on the day once you've done that work separately.
Yeah, and I mean, there are so many scenes that are powerful and staggering and heartbreaking and require so much vulnerability as an actor. So how do you prepare for something like that, you know, similar to the last scene, I would say, is one of the examples. And then, you know, as a director, how do you create a safe space, a safe set, and work with the actors to really bring to life what we saw on camera in the way that it really needed to be shown, that left us all pretty speechless and applauding?
I'm not someone that can just cry on command. I definitely need a minute, and that's fine. I used to be super, I'm sure there's like a bunch of aspiring actors here. Yes, woot woot. And it's okay to not be this dramatic person that can cry on command. I used to be so ashamed of it and embarrassed and nervous in auditions and be like, please don't ask me to cry because I can't do it that fast. But it's human, and there's going to be moments where it comes to you really easily. In the film, there were moments that it came to me easily and I felt the emotion, and there were days that I've been working for 12 hours and I don't feel anything and I don't have any tears left in me, and you have to work with that too. So I think it's just a matter of not being so hard on yourself if you don't get to exactly where you think you were going to get, and just adapt accordingly. And I think having a great director is really helpful in terms of in those moments when you need a little help and a little bit of guidance, and Annabelle was that for me. She's like, go think about your dad dying. I was like, okay. She's like, go in a corner, take a minute, I'll get everyone quiet and think about your dead dad. I was like, okay, I'll try.
Probably worked, though.
By the way, that's what that hospital scene is. That's a little secret.
Well, yeah, because I think having an acting background, I'm like, I relate to that so much. And, you know, great acting is not necessarily for everyone about being method. I thought something, again, that was really amazing about working with Cami is that she was very agile. So if something wasn't working, she wasn't hammered into anything. And neither was Badge. Both of them were so game to throw a scene on its head and to try something different and to really, you know, with that last scene of them together, which is obviously so painful, and it was so... It required them both to go to a really dark place that neither one really wanted to go to, but it was also very technical. So it's like it took a lot of like, okay, if I put my hand here and then we fall this way, you know, it took a lot of stunt work, honestly. And like, I'm not a stunt star. I can't
We didn't have any stunt coordinator.
We have a stunt coordinator.
We don't have the budget.
No, and it got to a place where it just became really raw, and like we had kind of a foundation for it where they felt comfortable, but then it got to a place in Cami so fearless that it just like, you know, it kind of came to life at a certain point. But yeah, about setting the stage for vulnerable, I don't know, we had a week of rehearsal, and I think it was just luck that Badge and Cami had such great chemistry together. But we rehearsed each scene in the intended location, which I think was really helpful in terms of, I really wanted the clothes to feel like her clothes. I wanted the room to feel like her room, and I wanted it, you know, I wanted it to all feel very personal. And I think, you know, you see that on the screen. And yeah, I don't know. I always say I want to give the actors the freedom and the compassion and the unjudgmental gaze that they can do their best work, but they can also totally mess up, because that is their best work. Like doing something that you didn't necessarily expect and might seem like wrong or bad, a lot of the times is actually really brilliant. So that was a big part of our shoot.
It's awesome. Well, it definitely worked. Yeah, I guess something that I've been ruminating on in, over the past hour is the complexity of James's character, complexity of all the characters that we saw on screen, but their father-daughter relationship, it's interesting to watch unfold because you can see Cammie's character has such a compassion for her father, and it's not her making excuses for him, but she does see the humanity behind his addiction, behind his PTSD. And I just love for you to both talk a little bit about what that looks like and what you were trying to bring in terms of the writing, in terms of their relationship, and the bigger conversation that is behind the headlines of the opioid crisis to a place that is more relatable but also quite complex.
Well, I would say a big thing for us was kind of trying to find the humanity, like you were saying, in these characters, and and I guess shed light on these really pertinent global issues like the opioid crisis, but not have the characters be defined by these issues, because that's just not how people navigate life, And so with Badge particularly, it was a lot about like Hank's ignorance of his own diseases, and his own demons were not things that he was thinking about. You actually see it more in Mickey's eyes and her cognizance than you do in his. And for him, it was a lot about like his kind of smiling, and it's like, in the eyes, I'm gonna fuck you up, but like he's still smiling, and like that is way scarier to me than someone who's just menacing all the time. Badge was able to strike that balance better than I could have ever imagined. And then with Cammie, she has such a amazing sense of understanding and perceiving in her eyes. It's just how she is as a human being. She can see everything. And so there was a lot of little things in Badge's performance that he wasn't aware of that she was picking up on moment to moment. And I think in terms of the performance, we tried to like strike that balance. And then you were asking, there's something else?
Yeah, I'm like, that wasn't a real question. Sorry about that. No, it was more about just in the way that you were crafting the characters, and I think you're really touching on that, is that, there is such a bigger conversation to be had behind addiction, and he was, at the end of the day, abusive in his relationship to his daughter, and that's something that obviously she comes to find in her own, but it is such a process. It's this coming to terms with that. So I guess for Mickey's character, what is the evolution of her arc from a mental process? You obviously see her ditch the boyfriend who emulates her father, and then she, is in a relationship but not quite there yet, and evolving, and then she finally realizes that she has to get out. But where do you think that line is drawn? And maybe speak a little bit about that process in her coming of age.
Well, something I think that we talked about a lot was that these people really love each other. It's not an entirely fraught relationship, because then the answer would be really clear, and she would just be kind of self-destructive, that they don't have there's no story if she doesn't love him. And I think that's the issue with any sort of abusive relationship, is like, you're like, you can't really see the love from the danger. And so it began in a place where there is a lot of love between them. You do see them dancing together, and they do have a lovely night, but it's like he got wasted and she's bringing him home drunk and putting him to bed. That's what those scenes are. But at the same time, they're dining and dashing, and there is all this adrenaline, and there's so much love between them, and it's this very complex thing that's really hard to decipher as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old girl. And so I think always remembering the love and I guess, they're kind of buddies was really important to the performance, because then it had somewhere to grow.
I think that there was a big, thing with playing Mickey. I didn't want anyone at any given point to be like, I wanted you to feel, or the audience to feel like, oh my God, she has to leave him. Is she crazy? What is she not seeing? And then a second later, they're like, but maybe she should stay because she loves him and he loves her. And that's what I think James Badge Dale did so well, is that he can be so evil, and it's so obvious what Mickey needs to do. And then there's moments you're like, but it's her dad, and they love each other, and they've all they got. So I wanted there to not be like a definite answer. And I wanted Mickey to not be either too strong or too vulnerable. I thought that she should be both things and then none of the things, and then sometimes strong and sometimes vulnerable, because as humans, that's how we are. We're never just one linear thing. So that was the element that I really wanted to bring to Mickey, and I thought was really cool about James Badgedale's performance.
Yeah, I felt conflicted even, and you can tell I think it might be 20 minutes out that she says, no, I won't leave you. And obviously things devolve from there. So when she's running in that last scene, what do you envision is going through her mind? Obviously she is left with almost no money. He wipes out her bank account and she doesn't really know where she might be going. She has this dream of going west, but she just knows then that she has to break this cycle of toxicity. So what do you envision is Mickey's next step, if anything?
There was a lot of debate, and we actually shot. We shot another ending that didn't make it to the movie a couple months after the shoot. We shot it she was at the beach in San Diego and had made it. But I mean, that was more of a director's choice. She wanted to leave it ambiguous, which I think worked, because I always get annoyed when I walk out of a movie. I'm like, what happened? I'm like, well, you're just going to leave me with that after 2 hours of my life? But I actually think it works in this movie, because I don't think it's about where she goes or if she ends up going to the West Coast, or if she ends up, running back to him. It wasn't about that in that moment, and I think that's what Annabelle was. I fought her on it. I was like, you need to put the ending. She's like, no, you don't. And I fought her, and she fought back, and it worked. But I think that's what is cool, is that it's everything leading up to that moment, and after that moment, it doesn't matter, but she had the strength to leave him. And if it's for 5 years or 10 years, if she checks back in or if she never speaks to him again, it was that intention and that ending scene.
Yeah. Us fighting about the edit. Yeah. Cami, this is another part. I will say it's another thing I love working with Cami is you really, I mean, I said this already, but she really does call bullshit, I would say, in terms of this just doesn't. We shot that scene, remember, when you were, on the ground and Wyatt was on the stoop, and you were like, this is weird. Or it was something like that. You were like, wasn't working, and then she, changed the blocking, and, she was like, I'm going to try it this way, and then it worked immediately.
But that doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work.
You won't be on a big studio movie and being like, I think that character should be there, and that character should be there.
Well, no, but...
I wish.
But I also think that some of the best ideas come from the actors, honestly, and this movie is a great example of that. And so many of the ideas of little things, in Badge, oh, this is a great one. At the end of the scene with Watkins, Rebecca Henderson, and she leaves and he pours her drink into, that's all him. I couldn't have thought of that. It's just some messed up thing that Badge that's what Hank would do.
Well, I feel like more directors should be like Annabelle, and if any of you guys are aspiring directors out here, you should trust your actors more, because we've done a lot of work on the characters and we think we have really good ideas, and sometimes they're not great, but sometimes they really work, so you should really trust us.
It's gold.
And Annabelle did.
It's gold. It's these gold moments. There's so many little things that the director could never think of, really.
You guys have great chemistry, both on screen and off. And I guess going back a little bit to the larger implications with what's happening in America's opioid crisis, was that kept in mind in the writing of this screenplay? And I guess, what do you want to add to that conversation from a filmmaking perspective that maybe you hadn't seen before in film?
Well, I started writing this in 2014, and Hank was an addict of oxycodone then, and the problem has only been more exacerbated and the epidemic has only grown since then, which is so sad to hear. And it's very sad that these issues are only getting worse. I don't think I see enough representation of the opioid crisis in terms of how it affects the child or how it affects the partner. And the same with the veterans issue is I don't see a lot of stories about the way PTSD and addiction and grief and physical ailments and medical bills and all these stresses can affect the family unit, not just the person suffering. And oftentimes that spouse or that child or that parent is inheriting a lot of that stress as well. If not, being on the outside and never really knowing what that person is going to do or what's going to happen is terrifying to live with. And so I think with this, it's about codependency, yes, and the child has become the parent, but then because this story encompasses this man who's been failed by his country. He's served and then he's come home and the country has completely failed him. And it's this tragic story of a war hero who has access to no real help, and his daughter has been forced to take care of him. It's a very, it's tragic, but it's also very common. And so I think, if anything, I want to contribute to the conversation, which there should be a louder one happening, in terms of the way drug companies peddle pills to veterans and the lack of access a lot of veterans have to resources like therapy and, maybe more holistic drugs or more holistic forms of healing. And then the lack of resources for children dealing with these things.
And the children who have to reparent their parents in the cycle of healing.
Yeah, and you're born into this world with really no shot at a life for yourself. I think I was talking to this woman who's the head of an organization, Kids Matter, that deals with children of the opioid crisis. And she was saying this is the ideal situation, is that the kid does get out, but this doesn't happen a lot of the time, just because not everyone has a Watkins or a Wyatt or somebody in their life to say you can transcend your circumstance.
Yeah, and going to Wyatt, I really, really loved his character. Was that the intention? He, is that beacon of hope, even though it broke my heart that they didn't end up, working it out. That wasn't part of a happy ending. But what did you write his character with in mind in terms of Cammy's character's Mickey's evolution?
I think he's kind of a mirror of Mickey's real potential, her intelligence, her self-sufficiency, and her dreamer side, her side that has these aspirations to go to the West Coast. And, the people in her life, and really the two males in her life, just reflect where she is now, but he kind of reflects the potential of where she could be. And the biggest difference, I think, is that he sees her as an equal. He doesn't see her as a person in service to her, which is, for the women or anyone who's felt other in the room, it's a revolutionary thing to feel really seen by a person. And I think that was the gift he gave her. But then in turn, when she kind of sides with her father and treats herself as less than, he can't be part of the relationship anymore.
Makes a lot of sense. And so this film is coming out, is it November 13th?
It's November 13th in New York and then November 22nd in LA.
Yeah, what are your hopes for it? So obviously it's going to have a theatrical run and distribution afterwards. So are you hoping it will be seen by wide audiences? And is there any sort of impact campaign going back to this larger social conversation? Will there be any sort of impact-driven conversation from a marketing perspective around the film as well?
I think we want to keep this conversation going and keep showing this movie for as long as we can, as long as it's relevant, and particularly with outreach with kids who are at risk and young women who are at risk. I think it's really important to inspire each other and help each other, and definitely this movie is something that I want to continue sharing with people who are in those situations.
Refinery will share it.
Yes.
And work with the impact outreach as well.
Amazing.
But going back to both of you and your own professional careers, what's next on the horizon? Is there any projects that you're both working on that you want to share?
Annie's writing her next movie.
True. I hope we get to work. I hope Cammy and I get to work together again.
I thought I was already cast in your next project.
It was already decided.
Do you have someone else in mind?
I really this has been, I know.
Good to know.
This has been the most amazing partnership, so we're going to keep it going for sure.
Yeah, we're real friends, IRL.
Our third wheel, our producer, Lizzie Shapiro, is not here, but she deserves to be, because the three of us really, we're such a team on this movie, and it's really lucky. I feel very lucky to have an actor who is so behind the movie and you gave everything to it. It's very cool.
And what about you, Camila? Do you have anything on the horizon?
Nothing that I can talk about, but I'm very new to this industry. I've only been doing this professionally for 3 years. So this is my third movie and my first real lead, because I shared the other films with other people. not that I didn't share this with James Badgedale, but my face is on the screen like most of the movie. That's what I mean by lead. And I just, now I feel kind of spoiled because I got to tell such a cool story and such an important story about such a relevant topic and work with someone that I absolutely love, and I loved everyone on the team, so I got kind of spoiled in that department, and I hope my next job can live up to it. But as long as I can tell stories where people walk out of a theater and are either laughing or crying or touched, or they don't even have to like the movie, but as long as they feel something for it, that's the career that I want to have, and hopefully I get to tell important stories for the rest of my life.
Well said, well said. And I guess my last question, I don't know if we have time for audience questions, but I know we're obviously at the SCAD University, and so for a lot of the students here studying, performing arts or directing, Breakout starts today, and obviously from a directorial standpoint, this is quite a breakout, debut. So what would your advice be to those who are looking to break out, who may not, have resources, connections with Hollywood professionals, who are looking at this seemingly daunting task of becoming a well-known director or well-known actor in such a competitive landscape? What would your advice be to someone who is just starting that journey?
I look at her always. I'm like, you can take this? Well, I mean, I don't know if this, I think just go for it, especially if you're young, and even if you're not young, it doesn't matter. You should go for it. You should chase your dreams. I quit a job that was very stupid for me to quit, but I followed my dream and made this movie.
I did too. I should have quit.
What jobs were those? Wait, tell us.
Which one?
Which job did you quit?
So I used to work on a CBS procedural show called Bull, and I was able to leave the show to make this movie. And of course, I quit the job, and a couple weeks later, I think everything fell apart with this movie. I think we lost a big chunk of financing. We lost some cast. Of course that happens, but my producer and I moved to Montana. We went out there and we just, we really hustled. And with a lot of willpower and luck, for sure, we made it happen. So there was nothing really calculated about this journey for me. It was a complete labor of love I need to make this movie happen by any means possible. And, I don't really know why I'm up here. I'd never envisioned that this was going to happen. But I would just say, you should go for it. Really, life is too short. And I feel so happy that I did, because this is my calling. And I was so happy to be able to break out of acting and start directing. And now that's a real job for women, because you saw at the directors panel, there are tons of working female directors of all ages, and it's an amazing thing.
Well, I abandoned a career before this that was pretty lucrative to do independent filmmaking, which probably wasn't the best financial choice, but I took it anyway. The thing is, when you love something as much as I think I love what I do and what Annabelle loves what she does, there's nothing that's gonna stop you, whether it's when you're 20 or 25 or 30, or you end up quitting your job at 50 and becoming an actor. That's the beauty of acting, is that there's roles for every person and every age. It's just a matter of, I think, honing your talent, go to an acting class, get your feet wet. You're gonna be terrified. I couldn't speak in my first acting class. I was shaking, and that was 2 weeks ago, so. No, it was really 2 weeks ago. And I think it's just, you're gonna fail. Whoever tells you you're not gonna fail is lying to you, because I've had so many failures just to get this one movie, and that's just me being honest. And I think that if it's something that you wanna do, no matter what amazing career you have or job you have now that you think you can't leave, you can, and it's just taking a risk and putting all your chips in the right basket and just working hard until you achieve some level of success, whatever that means for you.
Well, congratulations to you both. I cannot wait personally to keep following both of your careers and see where you'll be in 5 years. Mickey and the Bear, everybody tell your friends.
Yes,
it will be out on November 13th. I know I'll go back to New York and spread the good word. And congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.